All right. Well, lovely to see you, Beth. How's it going?
Good, thank you. How are you doing this morning, Laura?
I'm awesome. Really
Good.
keen to have this chat with you.
Yeah, I'm
So,
excited for it.
for those of you that are joining the webinar, um, we'll be introducing ourselves very shortly. Some of you are our existing clients. You may know me as that person that did the demo for you to you and then chased you for months afterwards. So I'm still here, and I'm here today with the lovely Beth from Hampers with Bite. So we will be taking you through some of the ways that she and Hampers with Bite manage seasonality in a very interesting way, and how ezyCollect helped with that. So while we're waiting, we're just going to take a couple of minutes before we get into the presentation, just so that people have the time to join. But while we're waiting, Beth, anything interesting happened to you this morning?
It chucked it down in Melbourne, and then a tram decided to not let me on. So it's been a bad start to the day, to be
Oh,
honest. But I think it's going to get better. It's definitely going to get better.
it's
What
already
about you?
getting better because we're together.
Exactly, exactly.
Um, yeah, no. So look, it hasn't started raining again here. I don't know if people, not in Sydney know the news, but last week, Sydney hit its all-time record for rain ever, since records began.
So you are on par with Melbourne weather then, probably?
Pretty much, pretty much. But so we've been having a little reprieve. I think all the rain's gone down to you guys. So I did see some scary Nine News articles saying worst weather event of the year about to
Yeah.
hit Melbourne. So stay safe, everyone.
Thank you. I'm trying my best. I've got a very powerful umbrella with me today, which is good.
Oh, good. By the way, I was mentioning this before, but couldn't help but notice on this screen here, you can see ezyCollect and Hampers with Bite. We've both got orange logos. So I have to ask, Beth, is your hair a brand statement?
It wasn't originally, but I think that if it matches, then I might as well be representing Hampers everywhere I go.
I love that. Um, all right. So I think we should maybe get started in a minute. Just
Mm-hmm.
giving them maybe another 30 seconds for people to join. While we while we're getting started, maybe let's have a little think about what we're looking to get out of today's webinar. So anyone who's here, feel free to drop in the chat box any particular insights that you're looking to get out. We've also got an icebreaker poll, so just let us know what you're hoping to focus on, and we can make sure that we cover it. And I would assume that for those ezyCollect staff that are also on the webinar, if you want to just say that you've got some spare time and you want to hang out with me, that's very nice. All right. What are you hoping to get out of today, Beth?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that. I'm hoping to have, and I'm sure I will, an interesting conversation with yourself about the business, share some tips for other businesses as well, because we're a super seasonal company and it can definitely be really, really challenging. So to pick up some tips that we've learned along the way, for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really interested to chat to you about this because, like, people often think that seasonal businesses, like, there mustn't be a lot going on during the quiet period, but from the initial chats I've had with you, that's not necessarily the case. So it'll be
Yeah.
really interesting to see. All right, so it seems like most people are here to understand either they're in a seasonal business or if they're interested in just seeing like the commonalities between seasonal businesses and their own businesses, and how they can make cash flow management easy. Because I mean, even if you're not in an official seasonal business, most businesses go through quiet periods and higher, more intense periods, even if it's not as intense a seasonality. I know ezyCollect does, so it's useful information that will benefit everyone. All right, so let's get into the presentation. Let me just move a couple of things. There we go. So here's the agenda, what we're going to go through. So we're going to start off with a little bit of an introduction to Beth and myself, for anyone who doesn't know. Then we'll talk about some of the challenges that seasonal businesses encounter on a regular basis in general, and also about Hampers with Bites experience with seasonality and what the various challenges they overcome are, and also how COVID affected that. Then we're also going to talk about some of the amazing results that Hampers with Bite had. So they had 4 times revenue growth with 50% fewer resources. That's an amazing achievement. I'm sure every business here would love to have that kind of result. I know I would. So this kind of wisdom, I think, is going to be super helpful for us. And then we're going to get into 5 cash flow hacks that you can use to manage seasonality, whether you are, as I said before, an officially seasonal business or just you're encountering those normal ups and downs of business. And then at the end, if you've got any questions, you can ask us in the chat box. So without further ado, Beth, tell us about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Beth. I'm the head of Customer Operations at Hampers with Bite. This basically encompasses all of the stuff that you don't see that's hidden behind the scenes to do with our orders and our sales. So it encompasses the customer service team, the corporate invoicing team, the corporate order processing, and the accounts receivable as well. I've been with the company for 4 years, so just about to come into my 5th Christmas with them. And as I mentioned earlier, we are extremely seasonal. So about, I think, 60% at the moment of our revenue comes in the 4 months for us of Christmas. It used to be around 80% when I started. So we scale up and down massively throughout the year. So that's me.
Yeah, and I can see you you like trash reality TV outside work hours.
Yeah,
so what's your guilty pleasure?
Well, I'm English, so Love Island. I really, really love Love Island, and I have dedicated too many seasons essentially to watching Love Island because it's on 6 weeks of the year. Excuse me, and I've watched 6 years worth of it every single day. So I hate to do that maths and figure out how much I spend watching Love Island.
Look, we've all got our guilty pleasures. I've got some that I watch. So mine is 90 Day Fiance. It's a trash reality TV of its own, but it's pretty fun. All right, so I'm going to quickly introduce myself for those of you who were not encountered me when you signed up to ezyCollect. So I've been here since 2018 as well. So we both started at our businesses at roughly the same time. I was originally an SDR, so doing the cold calling, trying to get leads. But over time, I've become an account executive and been dealing with a lot more complex businesses. So by day, I'm the salesperson and consultant. By night, I'm an artist, sci-fi geek, and armchair philosopher. So if you ever want to drop me a note on LinkedIn about the origins of consciousness, I can talk your ear off about that.
Well, we could definitely have some very long conversations about that, I think. We'll save it for later. Though.
Yes, let's save it for later, but I would love to. All right, so Beth, can you tell me a little bit about what it was like when you first started at Hampers with Bite? What was the business like, and what was your job like, and some of the challenges you encountered?
It was, to be honest, completely different than it is now. When I first started, which was, I think, November 2018, mid-Christmas season, we were all crammed into one tiny office. We've also got a warehouse facility as well. Everything was manual, absolutely everything, exporting spreadsheets and multiple people working on the same spreadsheet. Things would get missed all the time, to be honest. Since then, we have gone from one warehouse to another. We've also moved offices, so everything is very, very different. And then, as I was saying earlier, we've got our on-peak season, which is Christmas, and off-peak. So in my first year at Hampers with Bite, after Christmas ended, there were about 5 other people in the office. Now we've got about, I think, 15 or so full-time employees, and that's just in the office. It's similar in the warehouse. It scales up a lot. And in off-peak, in my department alone, I have around 20 people, but then in December, I'll have 100, I think, something like that. So it scales up and down massively. And it's very, very different to how it was back in 2018, 2019, when I think it was just on my team. I was doing all 5 of those functions basically, whereas now it's an entire department with about 20 people in it, I think, year long.
That's honestly amazing. And like, you started out originally as a Christmas casual, right?
Yeah, doing the accounts receivables itself. So I'm very, very familiar with all of the benefits that ezyCollect has done for us, because I know all of the pain points. It would be calling people to check that they'd even received the invoices, calling them to remind them that they hadn't paid, taking the payments into our bank terminal, and constantly chasing people over phone and email, because there was no visibility whatsoever with all of those manual exports and a spreadsheet which we had to update every day to match all of the new payments coming in and the new invoices being created. It was very, very hard work, to be honest.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like how I would like to spend my Christmas period.
No.
So I'm glad that things changed over time. So let's talk a little bit about what happened during COVID, because obviously this has affected so many businesses, but it affected your business in sort of the opposite way to a lot of businesses in the industry, didn't it?
Yeah, Hampers with Bite was really, really fortunate in that we actually got a major boost during COVID. So we're a gift hamper company. Lots of people were sending lockdown gifts. Lots of companies were sending that, or working from home gifts, to kind of boost people's morale. We also got some very, very big orders from specific mining companies that were ordering for their entire workforce in Australia. But we weren't prepared for it in any way. I mean, no one was at all, were they? And with all of the added pressures of working from home for the first time, and everyone, of course, being on edge, it was a really, really difficult period for us. So we needed to level up and level up fast then to handle the extra volume of orders that we were getting through.
So
It wasn't easy.
How did you get the staff to handle those orders?
How did we add to the team, do you mean?
Yeah, like, was it difficult?
Oh God, yeah, it was a nightmare, absolute nightmare. Sorry that. So of course there were lots of people either furloughed or they were leaving the country. So it was really, really hard to hire. And I know that there's still difficulties in many industries in that aspect today, but it was really, really difficult to hire people appropriately. And then we were training people remotely, which we'd never done before, and just trying to shift everything that we did essentially into a new perspective, which was really, really difficult. Absolutely. We really struggled with it, to be honest.
Yeah, that sounds it's like a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, right? All this extra business. But if, you know, a lot of businesses have had this problem with scaling, right? You know, all the extra revenue is fantastic, but being able to actually fulfill it and handle all the accounting challenges is incredibly difficult.
Exactly.
All right, so let's pivot a little bit and talk about how I suppose we should call it exponential growth. How did you get that kind of growth with fewer resources?
So as you were saying, with that kind of revenue growth, you need to be able to scale somewhat to cope with it, to manage that workload, or you've got to simplify your processes, basically. So we tried to opt for the latter because we couldn't really do the former with all of the hiring difficulty we were having. So what we did was we automated as much as we could, and we simplified as much as we could as well, because if you're doing something that is manual, repetitive, convoluted, then it's going to take a lot longer than if you're just doing something fast and simple, basically. So, I mean, the introduction of ezyCollect, which was in 2019, a little bit before COVID hit and all of the lockdowns hit, was absolutely integral for that, because it meant that I'd say about, just off the top of my head, about 90% of the processes within the accounts receivable team were just gone, because you can set the communications really easily. All of the reminders are there. You've got a really, really nice dashboard. And then it meant that the team could actually focus on building that relationship, finding out what people's circumstances were, what their current payment cycles were, actually getting through to the people who were managing those kind of payments of our invoices, and making sure that we had a full awareness and a full understanding of what their situation was as well. Because there were lots of companies as well that simply couldn't pay their invoices. And as long as you know that, then you can deal with it appropriately, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for sure. ezyCollect itself and also many of our clients were encountering that exact same challenge, where a lot of the clients or the customers of the clients were refusing to pay. Like we have a lot of wholesale businesses that sell to hospitality, and all of their cafe customers were shut, and all the restaurants, for example. And so that's a really big challenge that you need to be able to have extra time to have that personal communication and really understand, because ultimately, like, something like COVID is temporary, but you want to have a long-term relationship with your customers. You don't want to, they'll remember you and be loyal if you're kind to them at a time like this.
Yeah, exactly. It's those personal relationships that really, really kind of help you build a business, build a partnership, and it just pays off so much once you've got that there.
Yeah. So do you have, like, if you could just explain, like, how did your day-to-day change from when you started at Hampers versus over time, when you were, let's say, a couple of years in? What's the makeup of your day now? Obviously, you're not sending as many reminders, but what are you able to focus more on these days?
So these days, I'm able to focus on system implementation and improvements, these kind of things that help the business as a whole, rather than spending a lot of the day-to-day doing very manual, repetitive tasks and trying to call people that don't necessarily want to speak to us, saying, "Hey guys, you owe us money. Can you please let us know when that one's going to come through?" Which takes up a lot of time, and we just want to have the visibility of that. So now my day personally is making sure that my team are happy with what's going on and that they're not doing anything that doesn't make sense to be doing, and kind of strategizing for the business as to how we can improve things internally and make things just simple, fast, and easy.
I love that. Definitely being able to work on a bit more of that strategic vision is a lot more enjoyable than the sort of mundane. Every day is the same kind of way to spend your time.
It is. All right. Exactly.
So let's look at a couple of the, you can see how the seasonality plays out in Hampers with Bites. So we can see here in this graph, this is data from ezyCollect. So we can see over the Christmas period that there is about, almost 80% more revenue, or at least 80% more customers in November, December than there are in, let's say, January, February. So what does this mean for how you've got to interact with them?
So during those kind of peak months of, October's the start of it, but especially November and December, we basically need to be putting the pressure on, and there's a huge number of communications there. It means a huge number of invoices, too much for a regular team to handle. So it means that the team can then focus on actually making those calls and building that connection. But during the rest of the year, it's obviously a lot more steady. It's pretty similar there from January to July, year long, basically. Oh, sorry, I think something just fell over in the building. There's a very big crash. Sorry, Laura, that completely threw me off. What was the question?
That's okay, no worries. So we're just talking about the different ways, like, maybe you've got a little bit more time to have those personal conversations when it's less busy. So is there a change in the percentage of automated communications in the busier months?
Yes, sorry, thank you. So during Christmas, as I was saying, we put the pressure on, so we changed the timing between the communications. We also change our invoicing terms as well to make them shorter. Jumping back to what we were talking about life before we had ezyCollect, was we didn't even have any payment terms on our invoices. It was either cash on delivery, cash on delivery, or immediate, and that was really hard for us to manage. Whereas now it's set on a certain number of days, and then we make tweaks to individual customers based on their payment, not payment plans, but payment cycles essentially. But this means that now we can just change the time. So we might leave it 2 days between communications. We might leave it a week if it's kind of mid-year and things aren't quite as crazy, and we're not kind of not rushing, but putting pressure on getting that money in sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. So What are the main ways that you actually keep the automated reminders personalized? Are there any tips for making them feel less like they came from a system?
Well, everyone, I mean, at least I do, hates communication that clearly looks like it was written by a robot, like those automated outreach emails. They're terrible, personally. I always ignore them. So what we try and do is make it sound personable, use as many of the fields as we can in the placeholder fields in the emails to make it seem more personal. Friendly tone as well, I think really goes a long way. And then also supplementing the automated emails with personal communication as well. So it's it always helps to have that kind of multifaceted approach, I think. And it's nice that ezyCollect, you can absolutely tailor and tweak all of the emails, everything that goes out, depending on your business and what kind of tone you want to have, because every business is different in that respect as well. Hampers with Bite, we're not particularly formal. To be honest, we like to have a kind of really personable connection with people. But then, for example, if it's, I don't know, like a solicitor's, a lawyer firm or something like that, you might want a different tone with it. So it's really, really customizable for whatever your business needs.
Absolutely. And I mean, of course, it makes sense that you would have such a personable tone because ultimately people are buying hampers for a celebration. So they should always be in a good mood when they're thinking about it, right?
Hopefully,
That's really awesome. So let's have a look at the days overdue, how they change. So I'll be showing a bit more of a dramatic change when you started using ezyCollect a little bit later, but this is the last financial year from 2021 to 2022. You can see that the days overdue rolling average is pretty consistent. So just a couple of days, around 5 days over terms. So can you tell me a little bit about what caused those spikes?
So the one in January would be, unfortunately, a hangover from Christmas, essentially. The legacy customers that haven't are potentially disputing payments, which unfortunately does happen, or there have been people going on leave, businesses shutting down for maybe 2 weeks. I think last year was a particularly early and it felt longer than usual shutdown for businesses because everyone needed a break last December for sure. In March, it would potentially be, that would be when we changed our payment terms back to our non-peak payment terms. So we tend to go from 14 days down to 7 approximately at Christmas time. So that would be probably when that migration happened and a bit of
yes, like an overlap almost of the different
terms.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, obviously, like when you've shrunk the graph so that it's only between 0 and 8 days, you could think, oh, there's a big jump in January. Then you realize it's only a jump of 2 days. So it's not really actually a bad thing. And a lot of, would you say that like, well, what would you say the average overdues were back in when you started?
Oh, it was hideous. I can't think of any numbers off the top of my head, but I remember a really, really long spreadsheet with probably, I would say, over 100 different entries that were open. And because we had no payment terms, everything was overdue as well, which is fantastic. Now it's definitely a much, much shorter list, and it's far more manageable for sure.
That's good to hear.
You can see me wincing there thinking about
yes. Well, we can actually we'll show you what the we'll show you what your historical data looked like in just a second.
I'm scared, but excited to see what this
it's
looks like.
illuminating, that's for sure. But let's get a sense of like how important it is to actually have visibility, because obviously you can't change a problem if you don't know what the problem is. So what is the importance of visibility to you?
It helps you prioritize appropriately, first and foremost. I think that also it can be really, really easy to get overwhelmed when you've got a to-do list that looks like it's a mile or kilometer long and the number of tasks you've got are simply insurmountable. So having a really, really clear list of things to prioritize. These are your biggest invoices. These are the most overdue. These are the ones that aren't reading things. These are the bounce backs that you're getting, and it's just all right there in front of you. Means that you don't have to think about, oh, where do I even start with this, because you've got that right in front of you. And then once you're kind of in the swing of things, then you can think a bit more creatively and think, okay, now that that to-do list is done, what can we do next? Where's the next thing to tackle? It massively helps.
All about like working smarter, not harder, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And with this is something interesting as well, like with regards to time saving for you. How much do you use the invoice matching when you take payments?
Every single day.
Yeah. So how much time, like this is something that the sales team at ezyCollect often debates. How long does it take to manually allocate a payment? And then how long does it take you when it's automated?
Okay, manually allocating a payment, I'd say probably about 90 seconds per payment on a good day with no interruptions.
Right.
And then interruptions, and having a difficult one always throws it off. So that's probably a pretty conservative 90 to 120 seconds, so a minute and a half to 2 minutes, I say.
Right, and then you know sometimes you might have hundreds to do, so that definitely adds up.
Especially going by that graph of communications. If there's 5,000 communications in a month, that's a lot of invoices, and they all need.
Right, absolutely. All right, so let's give you some insight into what the historical data was before ezyCollect. So this was your DSO when you started. So you can see the true DSO and then how that changed over time, and the rolling DSO from 6 months and 12 months. And then you just look at it, how it's changed and how consistent it is now.
I knew it would be pretty bad back then, but actually seeing how high that graph goes and then just go whoop, pretty much straight away is incredible. Wow. Yeah, sorry about whatever expression I was doing.
You know, part of it was probably
shocked.
It's not a reflection on how good a worker you were back in 2019, Beth.
Oh, you don't mean that, but we can only do as much as our systems and our processes enable us to. Basically, there are only 7 hours in a day, and if you don't have the kind of basis to be able to have things be simple, then of course it's going to be not as good a metric. That's for sure.
Right. So I've got another one for you, which is your days to collect.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, it's sort of it does kind of you can see there's some periods where it changes because of COVID, for example, but definitely isn't it lovely to see that for over a year, that graph that we showed a couple of slides back where it was all pretty steady, that's pretty much the very end part of this slide where it looks like an almost straight line. So like you can see, like you want to have that level of predictability with your cash flow, because you now know that it's pretty much going to come in a consistent way.
Yeah, which is so important, having that visibility on when people are going to be making payments. So even if we are, as I mentioned earlier, changing the terms for a particular client based on a special request or to match their pay cycles or something like that, just knowing when people are going to be paying makes everything so much easier, rather than having zero visibility on it at all.
Right. And that must surely really help when it comes to even being able to hire the staff that you need to hire, because as we know, like wages are going up, inflation's increasing, so being able to know, actually, yes, we will be able to hire another 50 staff this Christmas. That's super important.
And that at the beginning of COVID and the lockdowns, unpredictability was a huge factor for us. We did a hiring freeze, and we pulled 2 salaried jobs that we were actually posting around the same time, because we were like, we've just got no idea what's going to happen here in regards to the revenue. And of course it did turn out to be a boost in the end, but not having that visibility due to whatever the situation is really throws things off, for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the importance of making it easy for your customers to do the right thing, which is making it as frictionless as possible for them to pay. So what are the main ways that you receive payment from your customers now versus in the past?
So back in the day when I started, for people to make a card payment, they had to call us, and then a subset of the team were able to do that into our bank terminal, because obviously you don't want everyone being able to access your bank. And that made it really frustrating. There were long wait times for it, people having to do callbacks, and then you're playing phone tennis to try and get this through. People, of course, will always do bank transfers and EFT payments, that kind of thing. Even BPay sometimes, but now people can just do it themselves, because they get the email, they've got a link there. They can adjust the amount if they're playing on split cards, and there is no friction to it now, whereas before there was a lot of friction, to be honest, and that's definitely not the right way to be getting that cash in, is it?
Right, because obviously the more inconvenient it is for the customer to do it, the more it goes into the, I'll do it later bucket, which
Yeah.
I mean, we've all been there. I know that sometimes when I've been asked to pay something and I'm like, oh, I have to go into my bank and get the reference number and do it. And
Yeah.
oh, it's too hard. I'll do it later. And then, as we all know, procrastination kicks in, and later turns out to be a week later, if not more. So have you started using some of the new features in ezyCollect that have recently come out, like our direct debit system and also the text messages with the payment links?
Yeah, we haven't used texts yet, but we do have a couple of people who have signed up for direct debits, which is really exciting. So we've got a couple of different customer bases. Essentially, we've got our ongoing customers who order from us pretty consistently throughout the year, and then we've got our kind of Christmas only or one-off customers. So the companies that order from us once a month, once every couple of weeks, whatever, a couple of them have already signed up for direct debits. And this is without us even promoting it to people, because we wanted to kind of get a feel for it first. But we're definitely going to be rolling that out more next year. And then it just auto collects on the day that it's due, which is amazing. No one needs to do anything at all. You just set up the direct debit once and it's done. But no, we haven't used texts yet, which I think will be quite exciting, because in our marketing division, we get a really good response from sending texts out. We get a really high click-through rate. So I expect it will be very similar for ezyCollect as well.
That's awesome. And I mean, this graph here, we can see payments collected. Are these all being collected through ezyCollect payments, or are some of them manually coming through from the bank as well?
I would say that these are all through ezyCollect. Just looking at those invoice numbers there and the Christmas numbers, because I think we do slightly higher numbers of invoices during Christmas.
But I mean, given that number you mentioned to me before, how long it takes to manually allocate a payment, if you think about it, 90 seconds to 2 minutes times 2,000, that's, 600 minutes is 10 hours, if you put that into perspective. So, that's like almost a full week's work per month that you would have had to spend manually allocating payments.
And that's uninterrupted work as well.
Exactly. And it's like the most mind-numbing, boring work.
Yeah, so, it's really not exciting.
Yeah, so being able to have something that just does that for you, and it just matches it automatically, again, it gives you so much time to do more interesting, more strategic work, more customer relationship building. Giving
also manual. Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Any manual task, especially the stuff when it's to do with money, is so open to risk as well, because the more touch points there are, the more chance of human error, which is only natural, especially when you're spending 25% or more of your time matching payments. But when it auto matches, that risk is gone. Basically, you're not going to be allocating something to the wrong account. You're not going to be wondering who it's for. All of these kind of different things. It just eliminates all of that confusion.
Right. And also I know a common complaint I hear from prospects is that they say that, oh, there'll be overpayments or underpayments by a few cents if, they do it manually through the bank. And so then matching that's really difficult. Whereas when you're using ezyCollect payments, it will just the amount is correct. It will automatically match. So there's no fiddling around with like 30 cents here or 20 cents there. All right. So let's get into the 5 ways to manage cash flow through the highs and lows of seasonality. So we've got, the summary of what we're going to be talking about on the screen here. Why don't we start with understanding your cost and optimizing pricing to offset year-long costs? Because obviously every seasonal business, they'll be having a different, a wildly different cash flow across the year, but you've still got to pay people, like the permanent staff, you still got to pay them, you still got to keep the lights on, still got to pay rent for the warehouse, all of those things. So how does this factor into your costing strategy?
Yeah, of course. So another major cost that we have throughout the year is actually the ordering of our stock mid-year to have everything be ready to send out from November, December. So we need to be incorporating that true cost of what the operational costs for the year essentially. So yeah, you've got all of your salaries, your super, all of that, your leave loading, everything that you've got to be thinking about and trying to forecast appropriately for what you're going to be doing year by year, because the month by month revenue and the month by month outgoings are not going to match by any means. So it's definitely key to keep that in mind when you're setting your pricing during peak season, and then also during off peak as well, when you're trying to keep things steady and keep things ticking over.
So how often in a year do you change your pricing?
We don't often actually change our pricing itself. We have different ranges that we bring out every year, and then there are different margins incorporated in that to offset the true costs of, yes, the stock, but then, as you mentioned, the rent on the warehouse, rent on the office, everyone's salaries, the casual staff forecasting that we're planning on doing, all of those fun bills that come through constantly. And we do set that. It does vary depending on what kind of range it is and when we think we're going to be making the highest volume of sales, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So that then leads us into visibility of the cash flow cycle and incoming versus outgoing. So tell me a little bit about how you use your visibility in accounts receivable to inform accounts payable.
So in accounts receivable, we've obviously got the payment terms, which are set per customer. This shows us exactly when we're expecting to receive particularly larger sums of cash or portions of cash, because you've got the dashboard in ezyCollect that says this is this percentage. Sorry, really bad phrasing there. This is the percentage of your debtors who are going to be paying within this time, essentially, which is fantastic. So it helps you be aware of whatever you've got coming in. It's simple budgeting, but obviously on a wider scale, essentially. So you've got to have that visibility on what you're going to have coming in roughly, and then also, of course, what you've got going out, all of those bills that we discussed earlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes to make sure that you can pay for stuff 2-3 months down the line if you've got lower sales at the moment, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've been talking about automation throughout this whole conversation, but how has automation affected you in a dollar way?
Well, just to use that example of it's going to be a week's solid work. So, and that's in a accounts matching it in the ERP. That's one person, at least a week work, probably a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. That's going to be at least $2,000 just for 1 month there. So when you combine that with all of the chasing that we had to do, whether it's over phone, email, there will be hours and hours and hours saved. And every hour that someone is working, that equates to dollars. Every single second, every single task that someone does, it does equate to a dollar figure, essentially. So wherever you can make these small tweaks to make life simpler, to remove, sorry, I'm jumping again to the next one.
Oh no, this is great. No, you keep going. Absolutely.
It's all interconnected. Whenever you make life simpler for your team and your processes simpler for the team, it means that is dollars saved literally every single time. And it's also the economies of scale. So in the quieter months, when there are maybe a couple of hundred invoices, it doesn't matter quite so much. But when you are tripling or quadrupling the number of invoices that are being created and the number of customers that need to be contacted, those economies of scale really, really help, because there are simply not enough hours in the day to do anything. And then you get staff burnout as well, which no one wants whatsoever. So automation is a lot simpler and a lot faster.
Yeah, and I mean, I sometimes have conversations with accounts people that initially, when they hear about something like ezyCollect, they're worried that it's going to lead to them losing their job. But obviously that's not the case for you. It actually gave you more opportunities to pivot and to do more strategic things. So instead of just being an accounts receivables person, you're now like in operations and managing this huge team. So did you ever worry that it would replace you, or you were just like, no, I'm indispensable, I have so many good ideas?
No, because I know that if you're spending all of your time doing very, very manual, repetitive stuff, then that is not a good use of someone's time, to be honest. Everyone has got more stuff going on in their brain and more opportunities to think creatively and divert their attention to something that they're potentially more passionate about, or at least more interested in. And then that can actually improve the business. Whereas if you are downloading reports constantly and sending very similarly worded emails to tens, hundreds of people in a day, that's boring, to be honest. And if you are bored, then you're not going to be having fun or doing a good job. So it frees up the creativity. Yes, automation will potentially, and to be honest, I don't really believe this statement, but it will potentially reduce the number of overall employees that are working, but it means that people are always more free to think of things to do. Does that make sense? They can come up with creative solutions.
Well, it's growing the business instead of trying to deal with the existing business, if that makes sense. Like obviously Hampers with Byte grew their workforce considerably, so it's not causing those. It's more of the work that you do is just different and more interesting. So let's just talk a little bit. We mentioned before about how important it is to make it easy for the customer to do the right thing. So what were the main excuses customers would give you for late payment before using ezyCollect versus, the ones that excuses you get now?
Yeah, so before ezyCollect, one of the things was, well, you say it's due immediately, but you're not shipping the goods until 3 weeks down the line, a month down the line. That was definitely a huge roadblock. And back then, our production system and our account system were not linked in any way. So there was no way to be checking that kind of thing, really. So we would get excuses about, why is it due today? Why not when it's delivered? Or, oh, I didn't see your emails. Or I tried to call to pay by card, but I couldn't get through. All of these kind of things. Whereas now, the excuses for people not paying are far smaller. Struggling to think of stuff off the top of my head. It would be more bank transfers. We only authorize payments twice a month, something like that.
Right.
Or we're having our own cash flow issues. That's about it, really.
Right.
But a lot of different invoices, because it's simple, as I was kind of broaching earlier.
Absolutely.
You just get the payment link and it's right there, and you can pay on any type of card, and there's even pay in installments, there's direct debits, and people don't want to be making payments. Basically, it's not exactly exciting. So if you just do a one and done, set and forget, then it's great for
Yeah,
everyone.
absolutely. So this last fifth strategy here, can you tell me a little bit what it means to leverage wait time between communication?
Yeah. So you don't want to be annoying, basically, but you need to, or it helps, in my opinion, to change the wait time between all of the communications, depending on what time of year it is and what aspect of the season you're in. Like I touched on earlier, this definitely, we use it a lot when we have different delivery lead times, essentially, because in our off-peak, we'll normally see delivery, or at least sending of the order, being within 1 to 2 weeks. Whereas at Christmas time, people might be ordering now for delivery in December, or even getting orders for next year at this stage. So it helps to be changing those system-wide settings for across the board, depending on what season you're in, essentially.
Yeah. Can you give me some examples?
So at Christmas time, we put the pressure on, basically. And we get more annoying, to be honest, because we don't want to be damaging our relationships with our ongoing customers, basically. So it's like, we'll be polite about this. But during Christmas, we need to get that cash in, because there is a much bigger risk of people going on leave and not being able to pay, not seeing them, or stuff, or disputes like I was talking about earlier, and that kind of thing, where something does go wrong with the order because there's higher delivery volumes, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So we shift those communication times down. We also shift our invoicing terms down as well. So we go from 14 days to 7 days, and I think it's currently about 4 or 5 days between most of the communications. We switch that down to 3 or potentially even 2 days.
Yeah.
Just to constantly be in their ear, hey, you need to pay us right now.
It's important. And I mean, with Christmas, people have got so much else on their minds. So you have to be, I think everyone's got that additional tolerance for reminders at that time as well. Especially if you keep that jolly mood going.
We try.
All right. So let's, as we're getting close to the end of the webinar, let's talk about your key takeaways for managing a seasonal business. So as we mentioned before, it's important to know your true costs throughout the year. As you mentioned before, Beth, like being able to forecast, being able to plan, this is absolutely critical. And without the right information and the right data, that can't be done. So what would you say like the main source of truth is for your business at the moment? Is it MYOB?
No, to be honest, it's not, because it can be a really complicated system, to be honest, and also it's not very easy to look at. It's not very nice to look at. No accounting system is pretty, really, none of the base ones. So for our incoming funds, we definitely are looking at ezyCollect for that kind of information, because it's just simpler to read and more concise, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other key takeaways you wanted to raise, Beth?
I don't think so. I can't think of anything now. I'm sure it'll pop up at 2 a.m. or something like that, way after. But then I'll just message you on LinkedIn about it, and we can have a chat.
Absolutely. I would be delighted. So I think maybe we'll open it up to the audience then. So does anyone have any questions for Beth about her experience at Hampers with Bite, or just any questions in general? We'd be very interested to have a chat about this. Let's just see. By the way, I keep getting Slack notifications. Are they coming up in the presentation? Sorry about that if so. The challenges of using Slack. Well,
I turned mine off for this, because otherwise it would be popping constantly.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions that I personally have for you, Beth, is what's your secret? how did you go? Like you and I have been working at our respective businesses for 4 years each, and I'm not managing a team of 100 people. How did you do it? Like,
To be honest, part of it is luck, being in the right place at the right time, joining the business when it was fairly small, and then also being there when everything got crazy during COVID. And then part of it is that I am really, really nosy, basically. I like knowing exactly how things work. I like taking things apart, putting them back together again, and making them better. And I listen to people's feedback, very, very importantly, about what is working for you, what is annoying you in this process. What do you like doing about this? What do you dislike about it? And then using that to basically make things easier and better for people. But I've never been one to stay in my lane when it comes to work. I've always been like, I'm going to change things, which is exactly what I did within like 3 days of me joining the business all those years ago. And then they were like, oh, she's got a brain on her. We should probably keep her around. And I've never shut up, basically.
well,
As you can probably tell.
it's funny because, you know, when we talk about ezyCollect, like one of the things that we say is the squeaky wheel gets the oil, or polite nagging works. So that's true for life as well as for accounts receivable. Would you say that that's sort of you're a persistent voice in your company, and that's how you get things done?
I will speak up whenever I don't like something, basically, or if something doesn't make sense to me, then I'm not just going to kind of let it slide. I'll at least need to have a justification for that. Hopefully my colleagues don't find me annoying. I'll ask them when I go back upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm overly loud, but I am. I will speak, but it will be considered. Basically, I'm not shy about things.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a question in the chat box. One of them says, what do you do when your customer pays significantly later than they should?
So we definitely have this happen quite a lot, to be honest. So if they're an ongoing or a repeat customer and they've had a couple of invoices with us before, then we open up a conversation with them about like, hey guys, what is happening? Because our invoice terms are, for example, 14 days or whatever. Does that not match your payment cycle? Do you tend to do an end of month payment run? Are you having your own cash flow issues? Because if so, we can kind of work out more of a payment plan. It's about opening up that conversation, finding out what their circumstances are, and then not necessarily meeting them halfway, but maybe meeting them a quarter of the way, because you've got your own business needs as well. But it's all about opening up that dialogue for sure.
Yeah, and you find that most of the time that they are actually willing to come to the table and agree to something?
Yeah, to be honest, across an entire year, we might have 2, maybe 3, where customers are just like, nope, can't do it. The rest of the time, people are surprised that we're actually having the conversation and grateful that we are going to be meeting them halfway. But at the end of the day, it means that they're going to be getting the communications that are actually suited to them. They're not going to be getting payment reminders or chases when they know and we know that they can't actually pay in that time frame. So it really helps to understand the context as to why they're not paying.
Yeah, and of course, like ezyCollect has the flexibility to be able to do payment plans and promises and pausing and all of that. So
yeah, the pausing feature is a really, really useful one.
Yeah. With regards to visibility on risk levels of your customers, have you ever used our credit insights feature?
We haven't, to be honest. I have had conversations with a couple of people at ezyCollect about it, and it is something that I would like to do next year. The reason that we haven't used it yet, and sorry, Laura,
it's fine.
is we need to have ABNs in for everyone, and we've got a database. Basically, we just don't have the appropriate data for that one at this stage. And with the last couple of months, I was off for a while heading back to the UK. Simply haven't had the time, to be honest. But it is on the to-do list for next year when we're out of the Christmas season, because I think it would be really, really useful, especially in some industries that can be a bit riskier. I know that there were issues with construction earlier on this year. don't know what's going on with real estate. So it would be really, really useful to have that kind of information there. And then you can open that conversation early, so then you're not caught out unawares when it's already overdue. Or you can potentially, if it's really, really dire, even rescind that sale if possible.
Right. Absolutely. So yeah, when you're ready to have that conversation, you can just talk to me, Beth.
I will.
So another question that we've got is regarding the direct debit functionality of ezyCollect. And I think that's one for me actually to answer. Is it available for all now? So it is available for everyone using Simply Paid or ezyCollect payments. Now, I should say, wherever ezyCollect payments is available. So in Australia, New Zealand, and the US, it is available. So anyone that is interested in setting up direct debit, let us know. Now, depending on what your accounting system is, whether it will automatically write back to the ERP, it will depend on what system you're using, but we'd be happy to have a chat about setting that up for you. That is something that's been hugely of interest lately. Like we've had even some businesses that just want direct debit. I had a conversation with one of those type of businesses really recently. All right, so I think, let me see. Oh, okay, someone was very nice saying thank you. You're welcome, whoever you are. So look, we're getting towards the end of the meeting. Any last questions, feel free to send them through. Otherwise, just Beth, thank you so much for your time. It was really awesome chatting with you.
Thanks for having me.
I feel like, yeah, just for the viewers, when we were prepping for this, Beth and I would sometimes go off on these long tangents. So we've been trying to keep it to a minimum.
Yeah, I don't know how well I did during that, but hopefully, definitely better than last week when we first spoke.
Yes. But honestly, Beth, like I have to say, you're such an impressive person. Like it's amazing being able to go from like Christmas casual to manager of like up to 100 people in like 4 years. That's incredible. And we're very privileged to be part of that journey for Hampers with Bite, being able to help enable it. That's just really awesome. That's what we're here for.
It has been revolutionary, that's for sure. It's been a huge help. So thank you. That's very sweet of you.
Oh, you're welcome. So if any other businesses in this meeting today, if you would ever like to be in a webinar with us to talk about your experiences and your business success, not just ezyCollect, but in general, we'd love to have you on. So we've got our LinkedIn details here. If you want to reach out to me or to Beth, please do. And it doesn't have to just be about webinars or sales related things. Like I said, if you want to talk about philosophy with me, I'd be more than happy. But yeah, so we'd love to connect with you. And then in the last minute, Beth, do you want to tell us about the special offers that Hampers with Bite has got?
Yes, we've got a couple of things running at the moment. So I'm going to start with our October special, which is the first one there. So at the moment, we've got up to 40% off selected hampers, which is a fantastic offer. We've never, ever had a sale like this before. All of the products that it's applicable to are clearly marked. That one is going to be running out next week, I believe. So get in soon for that offer. And something that we're running for about another month or so, up to, I think, the 16th of November, is our early bird Christmas offer. So if you order before the 16th, then you'll get up to 20% off those hampers from our new Christmas range. And it is a really, really nice range that we've got this year. It's absolutely beautiful. And we have all of the snacks here all the time. So I am constantly eating.
Oh, it must be nice. So hopefully we are at the 1 hour mark. Hopefully it doesn't immediately turn off. We did have one last question that came through to me last minute from Vishal, saying, does ezyCollect take payments directly from a debit card, bank account, or just a credit card? So Vishal, it's actually all three of those things. So not just credit card. Beth was talking about credit card as like a general term for any card, really. But yeah, debit card and bank account can work. And if you want to chat more about that, please reach out to me. My number is, I'll just put it in the chat here for everyone. It is 0429 494 339. And I've also got, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'd be very happy to. All right, so we're slightly over time. We did pretty well today. Thank you again, Beth. It has been an absolute pleasure. And
Always.
thank you, everyone, for joining.
All right. Thank you, Laura. Have a lovely day, okay?
All right, everyone. Bye.
Bye.